This is early in the morning for me. This is 11:30, which is you're the first person I've talked to. I like tea over coffee. This is the original tea bag. My name is Jon Fisch. I'm from the Boston area, Newton, Mass. I got a brother. I got two parents still together. That's not a normal thing anymore. They've been married 42 years. Let's see. I go back to Boston a bunch. Government, if you're watching, I go back enough to keep Massachusetts license plates on my car. And went to school at University of Vermont, like you, sir. And that was a blur and fun. And now I live right here in Astoria, New York. I do stand-up comedy. You know, it's weird. I remember going to a comedy show in college at the Billings Student Center and just being like, this isn't good. But I don't remember like caring about it at all in college. It was like a hiatus from caring about it, because I remember in high school, that's when like it was on TV all the time, and it was me and my dad would watch Jerry Seinfeld's special and Roseanne's special, and we would watch like all that stuff that would come on at like late at night, like evening at the Improv and Caroline's show, and we remember this guy Dennis Wolfberg who passed away. He was one of my favorites. Larry Miller, and I really loved it, but I never thought that I could do that. I just never thought it. I was from like the suburbs where everybody was going to college and then gonna do psychology or something like that, and that was my path. And then when I graduated from college, that's when it kind of hit me that, oh, maybe I could try to do this. And I took one of those workshops with Rick Jenkins at the Comedy Studio in Cambridge, Mass. Mm-hmm. And I was petrified. The graduation was, to do 5 minutes in front of an audience. I didn't tell anybody to come. I was petrified. I didn't even tell anybody about it, really. And then after that was it, I didn't know what to do. I didn't go on stage for another year. I took another workshop. I went to do an improv class at another continuing education place, and there was nobody interested in it. They're like, you're the only one, so we're not doing the class. Do you want to take the stand-up class? So I was like, all right, it's a different place. Maybe it'll be different. It just happened to be Rick's partner, Jim DeCroto, who was just at a different place in this same graduation, 5 minutes. But this time I was in the class with a couple other people that wanted to continue. My friend Mike and my friend Ann, and Mike is like a writer, a TV writer out in LA. He's written on like Less Than Perfect and According to Jim, and he's doing some new show now for Nickelodeon, and Ann still does occasional stand-up. We do a benefit together she rides the Penn Mass Challenge, and so she'll come out of retirement a couple times a year, and they wanted to continue and search, so we sought out the open mics and stuff like that, and that's how we stayed. And we would meet after, because the workshops, everyone's like, you can't learn to be funny, but what it does do, at least for me and for my friends, is that we would have a deadline each week to write some material. We would go over the material with each other, try to brainstorm, and then after the class, we continued to do that. Like, we would meet on a weekly basis, and when you're first starting and you're not getting them out stage time, that's just as important, just to get the jokes out to somebody. So I remember probably the first couple of years, or at least the first year, probably doing it once a month even, and go to the open mic, try to get on, but it takes like a year to get your footing, like know where to go and stuff like that. So meeting, that helped. I don't talk about it too much on stage because it's considered too easy to talk about pooping. But I have an awful stomach. I have a lot of shitting stories. I have daily shitting stories. But and that my bad stomach actually helped me find the first place that I would work out at, really. There was this everyone that's grown up in Boston or went to school in Boston knows about the Alley. It's like one of the popular places to go drinking. It's like this alley near the theater district, on the backside of the theater district, right, near Boston Commons. And it's got like all these bars on both sides of it and stuff. And my cousin used to work at one of the places, and so we were hanging out there one night, and I had a little rumble in the tumble, and so I went to this place that I knew had an open mic on Sunday called The Vault. It was Remington's restaurant. Downstairs was an old bank vault, and that's where they did an open mic, and I had known about it. And this was like a Friday or Saturday, and I go in there, and I knew it just had a little toilet I could go into, so I go in there, and there's a comedy show down there. So I didn't know that there was comedy like on other nights of the week, like real shows. And one of the guys that was hosting was this guy, Troy Diamond, and sort of a Boston legend for many reasons. There was a comic, Greg Rodriguez, that was so enamored with this guy that he made T-shirts with his face on it, and we all wore it. So we were, and so he was hosting the show, and I had taken one of those workshops with him. I can't remember if it was the first or the second one. I think it was the first one. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, come down whenever you want. I'll try to put you on. And so then that, for the next probably year or so, like that's what I would do every Friday, Saturday that I wasn't booked for something. I knew it was time to kind of move to LA or New York, mm-hmm. and I had a couple auditions in New York, and I had planned this trip to LA and to New York to kind of decide. And on one of the auditions in New York, I remember talking to a manager, I think Peter Rosegarden, and he was super nice and like just talked to me for about a half hour, and he was telling me how like, you know, New York's kind of the place for you to go right now. You know, get funny, stay in the clubs every night. LA's kind of a place to go if you have a reason to go. And he started rattling off like some of his clients that went without his recommendation and how they were all back at this point. Mm-hmm. And that just kind of stuck with me. And, you know, the general vibe of what people were saying was like LA if you want to act, New York if you want to do stand-up. And so I just felt a little more at home in New York. I went out to LA. I was hoping for like 2 weeks, and then it ended up getting crunched to about a week. Mm-hmm. And then in New York, same thing, about a week. And had some headway in New York with a couple of the auditions. I had a good connection at a club, which I didn't even realize how important that was to have. You know, I ended up deciding to move to New York, and Lucian Hold at the comic strip had told me, you know, if you lived here, I would let you work at the club. And I was like, oh, well, I'm thinking of moving here. He's like, okay, well, give me a call when you move here. And this was probably about 6 months after that. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, he was like, he's like, well, a lot of people are moving back from LA. They're funnier than you. You'll have to audition for me again. And I did. Took a couple weeks of calling him to like nail down a night, but I remember passing that club, the comic strip, before I had even signed a lease. And I was excited. I remember taking an acting class, and like one of the things at the beginning that they would have you do for an exercise was like to close your eyes and react to like getting your dream acting role or whatever it was. And I was like, I could never muster up the excitement that these other people on the left and right of me were like yelling and screaming. And then like one day I realized like, oh, if I could picture myself getting like The Tonight Show or Letterman, that was what did it for me. And I remember having that thing, like walking back to like from the subway that night after passing at that club, like yelling in the street and like not caring who was hearing. Like I remember being like that excited